Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Preseason game 2 for the Browns, not much better than preseason game number 1 as they lose to the Minnesota Vikings, and really not much of anybody played. And injuries mounting, we'll get into that in just a minute. Tony Grossi, ESPN Cleveland, talking about the Browns running game and what he has seen from it.
Here's the problem. They don't practice a lot of running game in practice. First of all, you're not tackling, so you're getting false reads, right, on your running game. And then they go into the game, and they practice the passing game. So they expect push a button when the season starts, and the running game will be back. Oh, yeah, that's the Browns running game. I don't like what's happening with the running game. I said it from the start. It's no longer the identity. I don't know what the identity is going to be, but it's not the running game.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as Brownzone.com. Scott, I kind of think they were moving away from the running game being the identity, but it gets to the question of the way you practice, the way you play in preseason and training camp, it's been pretty consistent under this regime. They don't risk injury a whole lot.
No, they don't. And that's their philosophy, and it's about being healthy as long as you can. And, hopefully being healthy and playing your best football in December and January and February is the goal. The stuff Tony's saying about the run game is interesting. They've run it a decent amount in a couple of preseason games. I feel like maybe later in games, I don't know, it's had intermittent success. They ran it against the Vikings some. It's not the same. It's not live, but they weren't live the last couple of years. The Browns came out of the, gates gangbusters, especially last year, and Nick Chubb had a big game week 1, if I remember correctly. So I don't know how much correlation there is from practice to the actual season, right? I know it matters, and I know there's importance, but I don't know if you can go, okay, they're not running it here, they won't run it week 1. I don't think you can make that jump.
No, but I think just by the nature, even if they're going to run the ball, it's going to be different because I think you're going to run it.
Oh.
It's more spread out. You got 3 wide receivers. You're hoping to get, not hoping, you're looking for lighter boxes. So it's not, we're going to line up and run it right down. I don't know that the NFL, it's kind of evolved from going away from that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the Browns certainly are moving away from that. I don't think, and Dave, this is the big question, kind of hanging over the season as we enter it. I don't know that they're going to go completely away from it, right? They've gone with more 2 tight ends in practice than I thought they might. Now, there's still a ton of 3 receivers, but there are double tights out there. We saw it Saturday night. So, and there's still some under center and still some play action. So I feel like it's going to be a combination of what Stefanski like to do to some degree, and then an evolving to the spread out, 3 wides, more shotgun that Ken Dorsey's bringing.
What were some of the takeaways from the joint practices and the Vikings game from you?
Yeah, I mean, the joint practices, you have to start with, at least offensively. On Wednesday, they couldn't protect Watson. I counted 24 dropbacks, and, sacks are subjective. I had 6 or 8, between 6 and 8. Now, that's either 25 or 33% of the snaps of the dropbacks, way, way too many. And some of it's, physically they got beat. So a lot of them, if you ask Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson, and even Joe Bitonio, were miscommunications. The Vikings do different things than the Browns do defensively. It's a lot of 3-4. They were third and long situations. So you saw a lot of blitz looks, zone blitzes. You don't know who was coming. And the line struggled to pick it up. So that was the Wednesday offense. They were better Thursday. It was more red zone. They were better. It wasn't perfect. I thought defensively, Myles Garrett was outstanding, like you'd expect him to be, but against a good left tackle, dominated. And Martin Emerson Jr. held his own against Justin Jefferson. Those were my biggest takeaways from the joint practices. And then, the game, it was tackle injuries and a couple of big turnovers. right? Dorian Thompson-Robinson throws the pick in the 2-minute drill to end the first half, takes points off the board, and then Tyler Huntley comes out at the beginning of the second half and throws a pick in the red zone. It turns into points for the Vikings. If you're talking about the game, like those are two biggest plays in the game.
So, Jedrick Wills, we found out not coming back to practice this week. You mentioned the injuries. It almost seems like they might have thought Wills would. And the only thing I'm basing this on is if you knew Wills was going to be out and Conklin was going to struggle, then maybe you would have gone and gotten a couple of tackles. I just your thought. I mean, they're down really low on the tackles.
No, there's no doubt about that. I think they thought Jed Wills would be back by now, right? I was told in December when he had surgery, it was an MCL. Those don't take, 8-9 months to come back from normally. Now everybody's knee's different. Every injury is different. So, you can compare it to DeJuan Jones because DeJuan Jones, as far as I know, had something similar. He was back practicing, in May and June, and Wills is still not out there in the middle of August. But who knows, right? Something could have happened. It could have been a more severe injury. But I do think the Browns expected him at some point by now. The fact that he's not here makes the tackle situation look worse. But when you talk about what could they have done in the offseason, you had DeJuan Jones. You thought you'd have Wills. You thought Conklin would be back at some point, maybe not week 1, but at some point. But then you also had James Hudson III. They went out and signed Adeniji, who was a veteran with starting experience. They signed Ifedi, who has started 83 games in the league. So I think Andrew Berry learned from last year and brought in more experienced tackles, but now Adeniji's on IR. Hudson's hurt, right? So it just has subtracted from the depth that I think Andrew Berry felt pretty comfortable with when they started training camp.
So the other thing that happened, another guy that got banged up was Giovanni Ricci. And I know you wrote an article that they said he's going to be out a few weeks. What I had heard from a lot of people was the guy was more athletic and probably a better tight end than they first thought. Right? Just to take us through the article and just your perception, what you've seen from Ricci.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know what to expect. I think he has 9 catches in his career, 3 years coming in here. So I didn't expect a whole lot. And they threw to him a bunch. Right? If you watch these training camp practices, there's a lot of quick hitters, balls to the flats, backs, tight ends. So he got a fair amount of catches or targets and seemed to do a good job catching it. We saw it Saturday night. I think he had 4 catches. So, they list him as a fullback, but he was certainly a tight end / fullback or fullback / tight end, however you want to look at it. His injury, I think, opens the door for Zaire Mitchell-Payton to make the initial 53-man roster. If they keep, I don't know what they'll do with Ricci. Do they put him on IR? Do they keep him on the roster? Do they keep 3 or 4 tight ends? But it would seem to me that Mitchell-Payton is now the number 3 tight end going into week 1. He's done a much better job catching the ball than he has in his first 2 years. I mean, he spent the last 2 years on the practice squad. He's always been a physical specimen, can run, I think he can block. He's a big guy, but he struggled to catch the ball. And I've seen him make improvements last year and then another jump this year. So I think it's an opportunity for him. Now they have to figure out, I don't know how much fullback they were going to use with Ricci, like actually lined up in the backfield, but they'll have to figure it out. Can Mitchell-Payton do it? Do you go Nick Harris, who you brought back as your backup center and did it last year, played that fullback role? I think you could see either of those guys get however many, right? Is it 5? Is it 10 snaps at that backfield fullback spot?
So the other thing that you tweeted out, some roster moves, and we alluded to one of them. The Browns put Hakeem Adeniji on the IR. They re-signed offensive tackle Chim Okafor, and linebacker Brandon Boyer-Randall. They also waived wide receiver Matt Landers, who had kind of flashed a little bit early in training camp. Again, you got to get some healthy tackles in. I would imagine Okafor's probably going to play some in this final preseason game.
Oh, I would certainly think so. I mean, Ifedi hurt his hand the other day, but Stefanski says he's okay. So unless something dramatic happens, it'll be him at left tackle to start. And then you have Lorenzo Thompson, an undrafted rookie, and then you have Okafor. And those are your, unless I'm missing something, those are your three tackles. I think if Fetty gets out of there early with the rest of the starters, assuming they play, because he could be the guy week 1. If Hudson's not ready and Wills isn't ready, then it's going to be a Fetty. So you can't take too many more risks there. And then I would certainly expect Andrew Berry. I think these guys can get them through this week. And then you have cuts next week. And I would expect Andrew Berry to pursue the trade market and, eye the waiver wire looking for an upgrade at depth tackle.
All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, I'm calling on the Baker Mayfield thing that you guys were talking about. I understand you say he's 500, he's gone to 3 different teams. Well, I tend to realize last year, okay, he was 9-8, but their team showed up in a playoff game and almost won. Our team got crushed by a rookie quarterback, okay? So that, I guess, falls on our coach because you guys talk about a top roster. We got this, we got that. We're going to see when the season starts. With this schedule we got to play and everything, we're going to see how much the 2-time Coach of the Year does this year. I hope we do good, because if we do, I'll call you guys up and say you guys were right. But if we don't, I hope I hear something on the thing that you said we were right. Take care, guys.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, I when I'm wrong, I admit it. I have no problems admitting I'm wrong. Now, the Buccaneers beat the Eagles. Now, just as a refresher, Eagles started out 10-1. They went 1-5 and almost missed the playoffs. So that was the playoff win that you're talking about. To criticize Kevin Stefanski at this point, it's ludicrous. And here's the other thing. Baker Mayfield, his strength last year was throw the ball up to Mike Evans. And Mike Evans, in my mind, is forever the guy that won Johnny Manziel a Heisman Trophy. I used to watch him and go, yeah, the little quarterback's okay, but man, I want the big guy that can go and take the ball away and is a physical freak. So, again, and Scott, I did not criticize Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's a 500 quarterback. He's a mediocre, average NFL quarterback. There's nothing wrong with that. I applaud the Browns for going out and trying to upgrade the quarterback position. Swing for the fences. They did.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there, David. Plus, I think it's unfair to judge a coach on one game, right? Whatever that is. Is it Kevin Stefanski? Does he get the blame that they lost to the Texans last year? Sure. He's the head coach. Do I think it was Kevin Stefanski's fault? I do not. And I don't think you can accurately judge somebody based on a playoff game. Is Todd Bowles a better coach than Kevin Stefanski because he won a playoff game last year? I don't think so.
Yeah, I would agree.
A lot goes into it. They won that game. Good for him, but I think it goes beyond that.
Yeah, and again, I have no problem with Baker Mayfield. But to sit here and tell me he's the answer, he's the reason we're not advancing to the AFC Championship game, no, that's not true. You're revisionist. Don't be so narrow-minded. I defended Baker Mayfield when he was here. That's the thing. I said you can win with a guy like that. You're not going to win because of him, but you can win with a guy like that. So,
right. Baker played better and longer than Deshaun Watson last year. Right? If you're going to just do the heads-up comparison, you can make an argument right now that Baker Mayfield, the Browns would be better off with Baker Mayfield heading into 2024. You can make that argument. But I think you're 100% right when you say Baker wasn't good enough when the Browns went after Deshaun Watson. I don't think Baker will ever be a top 10 or 12 quarterback in this league, and that's what you're looking for. And they thought they were getting in Watson. Whether or not they did, the jury's still out. But I don't think Baker's ever going to be that guy. That doesn't mean he's bad. Doesn't mean he can't win a playoff game. Doesn't mean he can't win a Super Bowl. But that was the thinking.
Yeah, and again, don't judge the trade on the first 3 years. If you want to do that, that's fine. Browns have lost the first 3 years of the trade. They didn't do it with 3 years in mind. Just that would be what I would say. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread, and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play a cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions and prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can check him out on brownzone.com on the internet as well. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. You know, I'm getting real nervous with the mounting injuries the Browns are sustaining. And, you know, the final score of the preseason game doesn't matter to me. I'm more concerned with the operation, the execution, and the motivation for second and third stringers or even fourth stringers to make the team. Obviously, I have no clue of the intricate details of a play, but I try to watch the offense execute said play and try to dissect that play. But the injuries are my main concern, like I said, and they're piling up already. And truthfully, I don't know if I want to see Watson out there in the last preseason game. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemail. Scott, I thought that I thought that exact same thing when I watched the third tackle go down. I was like, ooh, man, I don't know. I think he needs preseason snaps, I think. I don't know that I'd risk it.
It's tough. I'm not a huge believer in preseason snaps matter a whole lot. I think there could be an exception for Deshaun Watson given the injuries coming off. Do you think he should take a hit? Do you want him to take a hit before the Dallas game, or at least put him on the field where he has to think about getting hit, which he hasn't had to do in training camp? Hasn't played a ton, right? Only 12 games in the last 3 seasons. Would those reps help at all, even if it's only 15 or 20? That's the constant battle I have. It's only 15 or 20 reps. Do they make a difference? Maybe. Are they a huge difference? Probably not. For him, though, I think it would help to get him out there to some degree. I also worry about injuries if you're the Browns. We talked about that. You got to get these guys healthy to week 1. On the other hand, he might have the same left tackle week 1. So, I think, though, you play him, I think they'll be careful. I don't think he's going to sit back in the pocket and hold the ball forever and take shot after shot. But sometimes you have to trust whoever's playing left tackle and then help him with chips and double teams and let Watson get a little bit of the game flow, whether that's 1 series or 2 series.
So this is from the Bleacher Report. Preseason week 2 takeaways from each team. Browns, Deontay Foreman is back, and he shows what he can provide to the backfield. Production in the run game wasn't impressive, 1.8 yards per carry. Those numbers included a 1-yard touchdown. Mentioned that he's big back, 235. 5 receptions, 46 yards. You know what? I thought just in seeing him, and I know we'll get into the article you wrote about him as well after that injury in camp. I just thought, I looked at him like, yeah, I can see why they like him, and I think there's pretty significant role for him.
I do too, especially without Nick Chubb. Things change when Nick Chubb comes back, assuming he comes back. Without him, it's Jerome Ford, and then they're trying to figure out. It's Dante Foreman, it's Pierre Strong Jr. We haven't seen Naheem Hines yet. He was going to be in that mix. They cut John Kelly Jr. So I think Foreman is going to play a significant amount. And what he showed that I think not everybody knew, and he even said this after the game, he showed he could catch the ball. And he doesn't have a lot of catches in his career. It's in that story, but I want to say 34 in his career. He had a career high 11 last year with the Bears catches. So you come in thinking, okay, this is a short yardage goal line guy. And they needed that because Kareem Hunt's not here anymore. He can step into that role, and we saw it with that 1-yard touchdown. But he thinks he showed that he can do more, and that included catching 5 passes and making some moves in the open field that were pretty impressive.
You wrote an article, he's the guy that was injured on that kickoff drill, had to be coptered to a hospital. Take us through that and just that article.
Yeah, it was an expression of thanks from Dante Foreman. Thankful that he got in the end zone against the Vikings, but more important than that, thankful that he could walk, thankful that he's alive. he said, because that was such a traumatic event. And he knew right away that he didn't know right away. He thought right away that it was going to be okay. He had movement in his extremities. They were just taking, he was immobilized as a precaution, flown to the hospital for precaution. But he said he didn't know until he went through all the tests, right? The x-rays, the MRIs, that there wasn't anything more serious, that he would be able to come back. And then this, however, 2 weeks later, was affirmation that, okay, he is okay. He said even when he went through the end zone, he felt the pain again in his, he said it goes kind of his neck down his back. He felt it, but he knows he's going to be okay. That he knows that they can treat it, that it's not something that's going to be a long-term or have a long-term effect. He's not worried about anything, serious, paralysis or anything like that. So it was a big moment for him, and it was a culmination of everything, starting with that scary sight on August 1st at the Greenbrier.
So this is kind of interesting. It's bubble standouts from through 2 preseason games, and we've talked about one of them, tight end Zaire Mitchell-Payton. You see the PFF grades. Week 1, 73.5, 28 snaps. Week 2, 81.9 is the grade. And then defensive tackle, Chris Williams, Week 1, 87.4. Week 2, 63.5. I'm with you. Mitchell-Payton looks like he can play in the league. I don't say that lightly. I'm like, man, this guy, you can tell he has worked on catching the football.
There's no doubt. That's one of my biggest takeaways, and now we get a chance to talk about it because he showed up Saturday night, because Ricci gets hurt. It feels like he's going to have a role week 1, or at least be around week 1. But I remember watching him because you can't miss him. When you watch all these players, some guys just stand out physically, and he's one of those guys. And I think it's funny, Dave. We know Dave Njoku, and he walks around without a shirt on, and he's always got the half shirt on, even when he has a shirt on, so you can see his abs and his body. Mitchell-Payton's got he has a better six-pack than David Njoku. He is chiseled. He's a specimen. I bet the two of those guys go back and forth about that in the locker room. So you had that, but then you would see him drop ball, and you say, okay, that's why he's not on the active roster. But the Browns are patient. He's been on the practice squad, and now to me, I've watched, and he's catching the ball much better than he did, and that gives him a chance to stick around and have a role.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. When we return, stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I called last week about the first preseason game, and I'm calling about this one. We looked exactly the same as we did last week. I understand, again, it's preseason, but these are all backups out there who have to play when our starters go down, and we keep getting more and more injuries. And I tell you, what are we going to do this week? Go out, we need tackles. What are we going to do, trade for a punter? And then our coach, we just have no excitement in these games at all. I mean, our excitement is about as good as listening to his post-game comments, because it's exactly the same. 3rd down and 15. Are we ever going to try to get a first down on 3rd and 15 and quit throwing 5-yard passes and not even try? I mean, that's what you're going to get the whole year. I'm sorry, guys, but that's my opinion again. We're not going anywhere with this clown. Take care, guys.
Brought to you by Sunshine and Roses. Scott, I'm concerned about the injuries. We've talked about it. I think the problem is they're not winning the game is not the most important thing. Now, I'm saying that, and Kevin Stefanski would probably slap me around a little bit and say, if we're keeping score, we're trying to win. But they don't place value on winning preseason games.
No, and they should not place values on winning preseason games. And they haven't played their starters much at all in these two games. I get the guy's point about the backups, and some played well, some didn't. I thought the defense did show life, got a bunch of sacks. There was pressure on the quarterback, the Vikings quarterback, all day. You mentioned Chris Williams in the last segment. He had 2 sacks, and we'd be talking about him more if he weren't in a position that's loaded with guys, defensive tackle. So I just think I think it's unfair to put too much on these preseason games. Some guys have shown up. Jamari Thrash, I think, has shown up. We mentioned Mitchell Payton. Guys on defense. Diabate, I think, has shown up. I think in the preseason you have to focus on individuals more than the big picture. On 3rd and 15 in the preseason, are you trying to get your quarterback killed by dropping him back, on a 7-step drop? Just get the ball out of his hands. If you have to punt, you have to punt. They went for it on a couple of 4th downs when they thought they were in range. You could pick it up, and they completed one from DTR to Thrash. That was a good play. So, and then just the last comment is I hope Kevin Stefanski does not watch this show, Dave, because he's getting killed.
Yeah, yeah. It's usually from Rochester too. Go figure. But here, along the lines of what we were just talking about, there have been 2,684 possible snaps for the Browns on both sides of the ball in 2 preseason games. Here's the breakdown, and we appreciate Cleology for doing this. By depth, starter snaps, 58, that's 2%. Second string snaps, 371, that's 14%. Total guys that are on the 2 deep snaps, 429, that's 16%. Third string or lower snaps, 84%. Not many third stringers will be making the football team. So that's the perspective to keep when you are looking at these preseason games.
Yeah, and yes, it is. And I get it's garbage that fans have to pay for this to go to the games, and maybe they're bored watching at home, but that's the reality. And I don't think it speaks to Kevin Stefanski at all. I don't think it speaks to the talent of this roster. It's just the way it is. It's just the reality of the situation. Now, maybe we'll see more starters play Saturday night in Seattle, and you get a little better gauge. I still wouldn't read anything into it or read too much into it. It will probably be more entertaining if the starters get out there. But Kevin Stefanski has not placed any importance on the preseason in 4 years, and they've gone to the playoffs twice.
Yeah, and in the next segment, we'll kind of deal with that as we have an interesting voicemail coming up. This is what we've learned from Week 2's preseason games, according to NFL.com. Jim Schwartz's defense continues to come in waves. Saturday's performance showed the backups can cause some havoc as well. First half alone, Cleveland generated a whopping 25 QB pressures and 3 sacks. Browns pressured Nick Mullins 17 of 21 attempts. Per next-gen stats for the game, the group earned 29 pressures, 5 sacks, including a safety, late in the contest. So again, the defense, even the backups, the third stringers, are getting after it.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think it's that last caller was exactly fair, because that's energy. That's showing up, that's playing hard, and I thought the defense did that. And pressuring the quarterback's a prime example of that. So, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of steps, if any, Jim Schwartz's defense takes in year 2, because there's more they can do. There's a better comfort level. There's more familiarity. The schedule's harder. The quarterbacks are better. But I think this defense has all the pieces necessary to be just as good as it was last year. I think or even better than it was last year. I really think this defense can dominate and can carry this offense for a while if it needs to be carried.
I think they improved the defense. I've said that. I think the linebackers are better. I think the defensive tackles have improved because of Quentin Jefferson and potentially Mike Hall, although we don't know how that's going to work out. Here's the thing. Some people just don't like the fact that Kevin Stefanski's not a screamer. And okay, but just say you don't like the fact that he's not a screamer. Don't say that he's not a good coach. You don't like that he doesn't scream. I get it. That doesn't make him less than a really good football coach. He also wrote an article.
And nobody's screaming in the preseason anyway.
No, and you know what? Most coaches aren't screamers. They don't do that. It's really tough to scream at a guy that's making $100 million because he thinks you're a fool. I mean, if you think about it. You wrote an article about Martin Emerson, kind of being motivated by not making the Pro Bowl last year. Take us through that article.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the defense having a chance to be better. He's one of the reasons. And he played really well last year. He thinks he can play better. I think he can play better. I think he's really coming into his own as a Pro Bowl caliber corner. And he talked about the motivation. Part of it's not making the Pro Bowl last year when he thought he deserved it. Part of it is he still can name in 2022. And, he carries that chip. He says it's not just about that. It's about the team. And it's about, winning games. But he carries that with him. And I just think he continues to prove that he's one of the best draft picks, if not the best draft pick Andrew Berry's made. And he and Denzel Ward, if Ward's healthy, have a chance to be the best cornerback duo in the league.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Emerson and Ward quite a bit. And you throw Greg Newsome in there, and now they got a trio. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out on the other side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle, Telegram, and BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon. I just wanted to call in and remind everybody about those wonderful times when we went 4-0 in the preseason and 0-16 in the regular season. I wouldn't worry too much about the preseason. It's going to be vanilla offense and defense. You're not going to see much. As Aaron Rodgers would say, relax.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, we knew we would get to it. 4-0 in the preseason and one of the only 0-16 regular seasons in NFL history. So that tells you how much preseason matters, one loss wise.
Yeah, it certainly does. And the other factor is, again, I'm saying it over and over, but if your starters don't play, it's a huge difference. And the Browns had a chance. It's not like they were blown out, even if they were. I mentioned those 2 interceptions earlier. Felt like they moved the ball both games to some degree. Jameis Winston in the quote-unquote starting offense got a field goal in that opener. Defense, gave up a long play in both games. But, again, I just wouldn't read too much into it. Practices, the joint practices matter. Practices count. Not that those are the end-all. I thought the Browns held their own against Minnesota. I know Minnesota's not the Chiefs, but Minnesota's got some good players on there. And the Browns have talent. Like, that hasn't changed. There's some injury concerns. You have to see how the offense evolves. You have to see how Deshaun Watson does. That's a huge question mark. But the defense is going to be really good, and they have a potential to be good on offense.
All right, so this is from Dogs by Nature. 3 trade targets for the Browns at left tackle. They start out with Packers offensive tackle Kadeem Telfort, 6'7", 322 in his second season, currently battling veteran Andre Dillard for the swing tackle with the Packers. Commanders offensive tackle Braden Daniels, 6'4", 297, second season after being drafted in the 4th round last year. He's battling the backup left tackle spot with the Commanders, and he could find himself on the bubble. And then another guy that we have heard before, Larry Borum, 6'5", 333, fifth-round pick in 2021, has started 23 games during his career. Last year he allowed 3 sacks, 411 snaps. Any of those guys ring a bell? Any of them make sense if they can if they can be? And again, we're talking about a guy that you hope is there as an insurance.
Yeah, those are all the time. I mean, I couldn't give you any kind of scouting report on any of those guys, but those are all the kind of guys the Browns are looking for when we're talking about how can they upgrade that position before week 1, if they feel it's necessary. If there's question marks with Jed Wills and James Hudson III and whoever else you have at tackle, if they still have those issues, or they just want healthier bodies, or they feel there's an upgrade, those are the type of guys that they could target. They're not getting somebody's starting left tackle. Trent Williams isn't coming here, right? Whoever that guy would be. This is the type of player that you're looking for in a minor trade. Maybe the Browns can trade a D tackle for a left tackle, or on the waiver wire. Can you find a young guy that you think you can bring in and he helps, and maybe he helps for the future? I have no doubt that that's what Andrew Berry will spend a big chunk of the next week plus paying attention to.
And I would pay close attention to stops, guys that have commonality with Andy Dickerson, because that can be a guy that can do what we need him to do. You're not going to find an all-pro left tackle. You're going to find a guy that he can do this, this, and this, and that's all we need to ask him to do. Let me ask you this: what are you paying attention to? What do you want to see from this final preseason game against the Seahawks? That's going to be like 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. start.
Yeah, it's a late one. You want to see the health, who plays, who gets out, does anybody get hurt? Because all of a sudden the clock's ticking before the regular season. Maybe 2 weeks from Saturday night to week 1 against the Cowboys. I want to see how Deshaun Watson looks, assuming he plays. Does he take a hit? Does he get back? How's his shoulder absorb the hit? Does he run at all? Does he look tentative to run? I mean, it's the preseason, so you got to be careful how much you read into things. But you want to watch those things. And then we've talked about it all day. It's Jermaine Ifedi at left tackle. How does he hold up? Do you gain confidence that he can handle week 1 if he needs to handle week 1? Those are the biggest things. And maybe Dustin Hopkins. We've not seen him kick in the preseason. I have not personally seen him kick in training camp. I think he's kicked at some points. They haven't made a big show about, kicking field goals. Yeah, I think it'd be nice to see him get out there before week 1.
Would you experiment at all with DeJuan Jones potentially at left tackle? Because if you do that, is that a sign that they're not sure when Jed Wills is coming back?
Yeah, that would certainly be a sign of that. I've gotten no indication that they want to move DeJuan Jones to the left side. Wills hasn't practiced at all this year, right? That includes the entire offseason program. And I don't think Jones has taken 1 rep over there. And I talked to him about it, and he said he wants to get better at right tackle. That's where he is. That's where his concentration is. Not that he has given up on left tackle as a long-term goal, although he said you're getting paid on both sides these days, and I'm not sure there's a big difference between left and right. But it's not like they have a guy that automatically slides in at right tackle if you switch Jones over. It'd be different if Conklin were healthy and you're thinking, okay, Wills isn't ready. These are our 2 best tackles. Who can play left side? That's not the issue. There's Jones, and then there's a lot of unknowns after that. So I don't think they're going to go in that direction.
Before I let you go, risk reward. Do you think it's worth giving Deshaun Watson 2 series or whatever amount of snaps in preseason?
I do. If they decide not to, I would not kill him. The coaching staff or the organization. But I think it could be helpful for all the reasons we mentioned earlier. Hasn't played a lot, coming off the injury. I think it makes some sense to get him in a game situation. You just have to be careful about it. Do not subject him to a bunch of hits, which means get the ball out of his hands and help out your left tackle.
Yeah, I'm with you. I could make the argument either way, so I don't have to make that decision. Kevin Stefanski does. So but yeah, whatever he does, I think he can defend. Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. Brownzone.com on the internet. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread, and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, lewd, and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play a cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions and prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, guys. I'm watching the preseason game, and I know it's a preseason game, but really, look about as exciting as having a tooth pulled without Novocaine. They got to do better than that. Are you kidding me with this? Boy, oh boy. Take care.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, it's kind of interesting. The Browns are one of the teams that clearly plays the preseason games because they have to play the preseason games, but they don't view them like some of the other teams do. But having said that, yeah, the preseason games have been tough to watch this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, you think back to, I'm old enough to remember Hugh Jackson thought it was important in turning the culture around. I think he went 4-0, undefeated. And that might have been the 1-15 year or the 0-16 year. Once you get into the season, nobody remembers anything about the preseason. And I think it's just living in the present. It is hard that they're out there playing the games, keeping score, that you're seeing what you see. But we talked about this, I think, last week. The Browns held out 26 players. There's only going to be 53 on the team when it's all said and done. So 26 was 50% of the roster, and that was your starters and backups. This last week, they held out 39. That's not only your starters and second team, that's pretty much, borderline third team. So you kind of get what you're putting out there, and I get it. I don't enjoy watching it as a reporter either, but that's why the coaches are going more and more to the joint practices, because that word, the C word, control. They have more control in those joint practices than in the game. Once the lights are on, the ball's kicked, you can call the plays and you can put who you want out there, but you can't really control what's going to happen. Plus, certain situations, down and distance, 2-minute drills, things like that. So that's why they view the value of the practices. They were going at it pretty hard last week, with the Vikings, and that was your 1s. That was much more beneficial, I think, to them than playing in the game. So, it is what it is. And when they go to 18 regular season games and 2 preseason, I think the preseason will probably be even worse. You might have one where they play some people, but it'll be maybe more joint practices than anything.
Yeah, and I get it. It is hard to watch. I just wouldn't read too much into it because, and you can debate whether it's the right approach or the wrong approach. It doesn't matter. Kevin Stefanski and this regime are going to play on the side of playing it safe relative to injuries. Now, having said that, the tackles have been getting beat up. I know you wrote an article, takeaways from the loss to the Vikings. Dante Foreman sparks, battle for the third QB, offensive tackle updates, wide receiver battle, Hall, and more. So take us through that article and just kind of your takeaways from the joint practices and the preseason game.
Well, thanks for reading it, Dave. I mean, it was a struggle to even come up with some takeaways, with 39 guys out. But, I mean, what stands out is the tackle situation. I mean, last year the team finished the season with your top 3 tackles on injury reserve. And then you basically lost who you thought were going to be your 4, 5, and 6 tackles. We know Hudson for some time. And we know Adina J, he was put on IR today. So I think Jermaine Afidi, he's going to be able to play. But you're really down your top 5 tackles on your projected depth chart. So that's one question. Do you really want to put Deshaun Watson out there, behind what you have left? And that's the other thing about the rest versus rust. I mean, if in that game the other night, let's say it was Jack Conklin, Jed Wills, and DeJuan Jones were getting some work, and those 3 guys were the 3 guys that went down, everybody would be wanting to string up Stefanski for that. So injuries are just so much a big part of the NFL. And, you look at that, the injuries situation, you got to keep an eye on. I thought Jed Wills would come off the pup this week and start practicing and maybe even play against the Seahawks. He's not going to. And Conklin is not going to. So you have DeJuan Jones and you have Jermaine Afidi, probably at left tackle. He started last week. So that's your situation. Not much depth beyond there. I talked about Foreman. I think it was first time he got on the field since this scary incident in West Virginia where he was life flighted. I thought he showed that he could be that power goal line back, kind of what Kareem Hunt did last year. Got close, has the nose for the goal line. And I was a little more impressed with his pass catching ability. I think he had 5 catches, 46 yards, had the longest catch of the game, 27 yards. So I think he showed a little bit. And I think he, along with Jerome Ford, show that they can hold down the fort if Nick Chubb or until Nick Chubb's back carrying the load. And, the quarterbacks, it's really a battle for the 3rd spot. I think DTR is still ahead. I think they still like him. They drafted him. He showed improvement throughout training camp. Tyler Huntley shows his ability. Both of them, got in trouble basically with the turnovers, the interceptions. Couldn't blame them on all of them. I think DTR threw one a little behind a receiver, but it went off his hands and it was intercepted in the red zone, took away a score. And Huntley, he had a bad throw that took away an opportunity in the red zone. And he also had one go off somebody's hands. So, I think ultimately, barring Winston and Watson are still healthy going into the season, along with DTR, they will try to trade Tyler Huntley, similar to what they did with Josh Dobbs. Look around for a team that's looking for a backup quarterback and see if they can turn him into a low draft pick.
So I know you also wrote a question about, or an article rather, about Deshaun Watson. He's going to have to perform when the season starts, regardless of what he does in the preseason. Let's start with: would you put him out there, given what they have at tackle? And I guess I keep going back and forth. If you're going to play Bitonio, Teller, and Posick, I might put him out there for a series. I don't know that that's going to help him significantly. I mean, is that going to make that big of a difference?
I don't know, other than just get a little bit of a live game action, the flow of the game. I probably would put him out there. DeJuan Jones is healthy. He can play right tackle. He was, last year, the last game that Watson played that he got hurt, James Hudson was at right tackle and Jaron Christian was at left tackle. Okay. You have DeJuan Jones, who I believe is an upgrade at right tackle. You mentioned the interior three. At left tackle's Jermaine Afidi. I think he started, 38, 40 games in the NFL at tackle. He started last week's game. He was the one of the three that was injured that left the game, but it was a finger injury, and he's good to go. So I don't see why he couldn't play left tackle. He probably will. And you could use a tight end, a double team, and help on that side, at least for a couple plays that Watson's in there. I don't think, you need to drop anything that has him stay in the pocket, long down the field or anything like that. So I think I would put him out there at least a little bit just to let him get his feet wet, even if it's only a series.
All right, before we go to break, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns on the roster bubble heading into the preseason finale. They say Deontay Foreman. I don't see that. Javion Cone, maybe a practice squad candidate. And Miles Harden, rookie cornerback. Now, again, I think 2 of those 3, Foreman and Harden, are pretty secure, but I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think of those 3, do you think all 3 of them are on the bubble? Do you think any of them are on the bubble?
Well, yeah, I think they're all could be on the bubble, but I think they like Foreman. They brought him in for a reason. Even with Nick Chubb on the roster, I still think he can fill the Kareem Hunt role. We haven't seen Nyheim Hines. He was brought in to be the returner, but also a pass catching, running back. You got Jerome Ford. I see a committee. I still say even if Chubb is ready and they start him early or even at the beginning of the year, they would do a committee, and I could see that committee being, Ford and Foreman and even if Chubb is part of the 3, I think they would use 3 different running backs. I think who's on the bubble is Pierre Strong. If they decide to keep Strong over Foreman, maybe that would be the play right now. But no, I think Foreman's in good shape. As far as Harden, what he has going for him, he was a draft pick. Draft picks of Andrew Berry have made it at least through 2 years, unless they were injured and they end up on injury reserve. I think he's had a good camp. He didn't have the greatest game the other night. He got beat, but I still think that he's in pretty good shape to make this team because he plays nickel or he plays the slot, and a lot of corners really aren't adept at the slot. And can't even remember the third one you said, but
Javion Cone, the undrafted guard.
I think they gave him money to be an undrafted free agent. I think he's definitely on the practice squad radar. If they feel that he can't make it through waivers, then he could push Michael Dunn off. When it comes down to the roster and the practice squad of 16, they really look at it as 69 players on the team. And a lot of it's strategy on who they think will make it through the waivers. There are veterans. There are guys that are going to be on this team that they plan to play, but for one reason or the other, never get claimed when they get waived. But a draft pick like Miles Harden could be claimed by another team because, he was drafted and other teams might have had him on their draft board. So depends. Cohen wasn't drafted, so they may think he could get through, but I think he's definitely on the practice squad if he isn't claimed. But he could push off, Michael Dunn, as a guard. By getting Nick Harris back, Nick Harris plays center and guard, so that could cause them to push a guy like Michael Dunn off the roster and free up a spot for Javion Cohen, I should say.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Now going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, turn our attention a little bit to the Seahawks preseason finale. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Jameis Winston was on the Pat McAfee show. Talked about the culture in the Browns organization.
Man, the leadership here is phenomenal, and it starts top down with our owner, Jimmy and D. Haslam, and it starts with our GM, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. Like, they are just doing an amazing job providing a supporting cast that is built for us to win. Like, everything here, like, this is the first place that I've been that has a player development department. Like, I am so blessed that we have people that are actually looking into how are we going to develop these players, how are we going to be the best version of ourselves every single day. And it's just so exciting just to see the people here. Obviously, you've been in Indianapolis, so you know the importance of having a fan culture that's so important. But when you walk in the building and people are happy to be at work because they get a chance to put on Browns gear, like, just the love for this football team in this city is amazing. And, you know, and I experienced that, you know, some in New Orleans, just all the support and all the love for football that they have. And this place is very similar, but to a point where, like, we're up north, like, all we have is football. You know, all we have is the Browns. You know, obviously people say, oh, we got the Buckeyes too. But in terms of the NFL, all we have is the Cleveland Browns up here on this lake, and we're looking forward to making some hay. And it starts with the people that are in leadership roles, showing that they will do whatever it takes for this team to be successful.
Fred, you know, you hear him, and again, Jameis Winston's a pretty good hype man, but it does kind of show you the turn that the front office in this organization now has made from 1-31 several years back.
Yeah, absolutely. The culture is different, and it starts, you know, with what Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski brought in. You got to give them credit, and you can see why they liked and why they brought in Jameis Winston. He can play, but he is such a supportive, positive influence in that locker room and around Deshaun Watson even. I mean, I just see him going on and on. When he does interviews with us, he spends a lot of time praising Deshaun Watson, and that can't help but help the situation with Watson and all that's going on. So yeah, I mean, you see that new facility they put up for the weight room. The weight room was graded as one of the low grades, and they built this new facility, 3 stories, and then they have, you know, a 25-yard, 2 walk-through areas and screens that are like 25 yards long. I've never seen a TV screen that long, and they have everything they need there. They just need to turn that into a Super Bowl.
All right, we look ahead. Final preseason game against the Seahawks. What are you paying attention to, and what do you need to see to feel better? The preseason's been pretty rough. What do you need to feel better going into the opener against the Cowboys?
You know, I've just learned in watching Kevin Stefanski's way he approaches is just not been very exciting. You know, really since he's been here, you really don't see much at all. And they just feel like they just want to get to the regular season, get started. And I know it's kind of hard. You look last year and they played the Bengals. They came out with a win. I mean, Joe Burrow wasn't his best, but they just played themselves into getting going. So I think that's their number one priority is get as many of these guys healthy as they can. I really didn't think that the original plan was to have the 7 guys on the PUP list or non-football injury to not any of them come off the list before the final preseason game, but that's where it is. So we'll see. I have to think that they've been expecting all along, to get some of those guys back for the season. So I think it all comes down, we've said all along, Deshaun Watson. So Friday or Saturday night, I want to see what he looks like. I'd like to see him get in, get out, but maybe have some success, get a couple connections, hit a couple receivers, and get in, get out, not get hurt, have some confidence going into the season kickoff.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave. Thank you.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Check him out. Always really good and insightful Browns coverage. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.